Hey everybody, welcome to another Chalk Talk session. Welcome to the channel. Glad to have you with us today. In this session, we're going to be talking about vMix and brought a special guest who's a vMix expert. Nick Robinson is going to be talking about how he uses vMix and walk us through. It's another tool out there like Ecamm that I've done in some other sessions, some other tools out there for live streaming, doing productions and things such as that. And so I want to thank you today for joining us. If you're new to the channel, thank you for watching this video. Hit that like button if this video is helpful. And if you're returning, thank you again. Happy New Year to everybody. We're doing this in 2020 at the end of the year, but excited to bring Nick here and do that. And just make sure that when you're watching the video, don't forget to hit subscribe and also hit the like button if you're watching on Facebook. Okay? And let's bring Nick in. Hey, Nick. Welcome.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for having me, or good morning over your way.
Yeah, absolutely. So let everybody know it's good evening for Nick because he's on the other side of the pond, and I use that because I'm saying it's over in the UK in London. So it's a little bit later next time, and it's morning my time, almost thereabouts. So yes, it's morning here, evening there. It's all the beauty of technology, connecting us wherever we're at, day or night, I think. So, Nick, thank you for being on the session today. I know we're going to kind of go through initially talk about part one. We're going to do is an overview of vMix and kind of a little bit about what it is and how it works and your expertise and how you've been doing a lot of the vMix productions over this year of 2020 and the year of the new norm, as we call it. So maybe just take a moment and maybe introduce yourself and give a quick background before we jump into the session.
Yeah, sure. So thank you again for having me on the podcast here. So so I've been in the industry for almost 10 years now, so quite a long time. This has been pretty much the entirety of my career. Where I came from was more of a theatre background, so sort of doing lighting, sound and video for theatre productions or pantomimes in the winter season, and sort of brought myself up through that way. Sort of very self-taught that way, so sort of started out from not knowing anything and then sort of getting a bit more advanced with it. And then sort of as I've gone along, I've sort of transitioned through different areas. So sort of got into lights for quite a while, and then moved on to audio, and then eventually moved on to video. So I suppose the bulk of my career has been in corporate events. So big sort of award shows, corporate conferences, sort of product launches in hotel ballrooms, conference centres,
Wow.
Exhibition centres. So a whole range of sort of places, and it's really been obviously a big change recently, moving over entirely virtual, going from sort of I suppose a more sort of physical realm where you've got sort of mixers, lighting decks, video switches, that kind of stuff, and really bringing that into the cloud. And sort of fast forward today into 2020 and going into 2021, it's really exciting that we've moved over to this fully, I suppose, cloud remote based workflow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, and I think that's kind of like in past couple sessions talking about with some other folks about that. That's been kind of a common theme that I've used in a lot of these sessions is the year of 2020, right? And it really is a year of transition and changes that we're having in terms of, the technology, kind of, I don't want to use the word takeover, but in a way, transitioning to a new type level of connectivity where previously we were in studios, like you've said, right, in their jobs and roles that we were in respectively, in physical locations. Now we've moved to this virtual setup and we're managing these productions remotely, which you do. You just stated, and Nick's done, I've seen several pictures on LinkedIn. He's done some fantastic productions. And so Nick's always kind of sharing about what he's up to and how things are going. So I'm excited to have Nick with us today. So Nick, one of the platforms you've been utilizing extensively is vMix for a lot of your productions and doing that. And so kind of that part one is talking about, what is vMix, maybe walking us through that process. How's that worked for you? And before we jump to another screen here, how does that work for you so far in terms of the transition and using that tool? Because I think it's an important factor for a lot of people that maybe are new to the live streaming space.
Yes, sure. So I've been, as well as my physical work, I've been in sort of a hybrid and virtual space for sort of the last 4 years in corporate environments for some, quite interesting and some large companies. And we went from using Cisco video conference codecs and network infrastructure, and then I've also used OBS and Wirecast, which are other products. But I think for me, vMix has been the one that's stood out, and I think a lot of it has for a lot of the industry, because it's so the use cases are so wide varying. Whether you want to use it in, I suppose, more of a physical manner, I don't know, if you want to live stream some worship in a church,
Right.
you've got a priest on the stage, and they've got a microphone on, and you want to stream out to the congregation who are at home, or down to the big conferences, or I've been watching some videos on esports today. It's entirely modular, and you can build it up from, like I say, a small, church production, in a small space, to, using it either as I do from home with multiple presentation machines, multiple instances of vMix and putting it in the cloud, to bringing it into a sort of hybrid manner for a big corporate event. So it's been working really well. And the thing I really like is it's, like I say, it's very modular. So if I want it to do one thing one day, and then I can make it do another thing the other day. So it's really nice in that way, where if a client comes to me with a request or their vision and they want to do a certain thing, and go, hey, this is the way to do it, and there's no real limitation. I suppose the only limitation is on the computer processing power, which is where it really comes into its own.
Yeah, and I think we're going to probably try to cover some of that requirements of what, and for everybody in the audience here that will be watching this video and we're recording today, is that, vMix is designed to work on a Windows-based platform in terms of a Windows-based PC. So Nick's kind of cover that, and we'll talk about some of the requirements. Those play a big factor in a lot of these productions if you do have the machines. So you do want to take that to consideration outside of your network and everything else, and as Nick kind of goes through this, so just keep that in the back of your mind. All right, Nick, so I'll let you jump in and we'll share your screen here.
Okay, great. So basically, once you've downloaded vMix from vmix.com, for anyone who's new and wants to learn how to use vMix, you need a Windows computer. And basically, you can go to vmix.com, and there's a free download for 60 days, I believe it is. And then you get the full pro license with the vMix callers and all the functionality that I've got here. So I've got the pro license, the full version, which allows you to do, I believe, 1,000 video inputs, and you can also do 8 virtual callers. So starting off loading the software, you'll get a blank interface. So up the top left, you can see your preview window. So what that is, it shows what's coming next before it goes out to the live platform. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the program window. So as you'll see, that's red. So that's basically what's live and what's recording and going out and streaming to the platform. So you'll see in the middle of the screen, you've got cut, fade, and merge. So that's where you do your transitions. So what we can do, we can drop down, and we've got lots of different transitions here. For most of my productions, I'll only use the cut, fade, or the merge, but there are some useful transitions within that. So down here on the left, you have got your inputs window, and then on the right, you've got your audio mixer. So like I say, when you first open the software, it'll be entirely blank. So what I'm going to do is sort of start off with a basic build of a show for instance, a corporate conference that we're going to run. So what we're going to do to add our input, so if we go to the bottom left, we're going to add a input. And then what we are going to do is bring in a video that we'd like to play. So if we go to our example and we've got sample video. So we've gone to input, video, and then we found our video file. And then if we click OK, that's now come in as an input. And as you can see, that's on the right hand side. So that will be live out to the platform. So what we're also going to do is bring in a logo. So if we go to add input, and then if we go down to image on the left, we're now again going to add my logo here. So this could be a JPEG, a PNG, obviously PNG if you want something transparent. And there we go, we've added my logo there, and we can press fade, and that's now gone out to the program. What we're also going to do is bring in a background. So as we get further into building the show file, we're going to build up some multi-views. So I want to bring in a background. So I've got a nice blue corporate background here. And then also what we're going to do is bring in a camera. So for instance, I've got a presenter who's in the room and I want to bring in their camera. So I would go to input select and then camera. So as you'll see here next to camera at the top, you've got drop down input. So this will show you every video input that you've got coming into your system. So as you can see, I've got 2 capture cards here, which basically allow me to bring a HDMI input into my computer. But just for this demonstration, I've got another camera, which I'm going to bring in. Okay, great. So we've brought in a camera here. And then also often for a lot of corporate sort of shows, we also want to be able to bring in a presentation. So what we are going to do is going to add another input. So there's 2 ways to bring in presentations. So usually it'd be from another computer running Google Slides or Slido or Microsoft PowerPoint. We can either bring that in through the camera and bring it in through a capture card, for instance, the Elgato game capture that I've got installed in my system. Or there's another way to bring it in, which is called NDI. So basically what NDI allows you to do is bring in a video source over the network. So you can download this from NewTek, and then if you just search NDI tools in Google, it'll hit up. And then we're running a bit of software called screen capture. And what that will do is create a screen capture of whatever's on the desktop of the computer that you want to bring in. And then we can bring that in as a live input. So what we're going to do is bring in our second screen. So I've got a presentation machine that's set up as extended screen. Just move my mouse here. Great. So as we can see, we've brought in a demonstration video, which is just a sample royalty-free video, which I've downloaded. We've got my logo. We've got a background, we've got my camera here, and then we've also got a presentation. So obviously that's all of your video inputs over on the left over here. So as you'll see, we've now got an audio source on the right. So it's good with vMix to have a basic understanding of how audio works and how routing works. So, but you know, you can learn it from scratch. So over here we've got the master, which basically is the send out to the stream. So the main source that would go out. And then you can send different sources. So for instance, the audio from my video, or a presenter microphone, or the audio from a presentation machine. And as you'll see here, also next to the master, you've got A, B, and C. So there is what you call bus outs within vMix. So you've got your master, which allows you to send audio out to the stream. And then what a bus out allows you to do is send a separate feed to a separate destination. So for instance, I've got a speaker in the room, and I would like to send my audio that's going out to the stream into the speaker. So what I can do is send for instance, the presentation audio here, the NDI input out to the external audio. So to do that, what we do is at the bottom of the input, you've got the sends. So M is send to master. Obviously, green means you would send that to that output. And then you've got A, B, and then after B, you can right click and then send to C, D, E, F, G, and you've got multiple bus outputs. So what we want to do to set up the bus outputs. So if we go up to the settings in the top right hand corner, we just click that. So on the left hand side, you've got audio settings. So what we want to do is go up to audio output. So you've got your master output, which will represent anything that's going out to the main. So that will send out to the stream, and you can also send it out to one of your devices. So for instance, in my setup, the audio goes through my LG screen and then sends out into an amplifier into some speakers that I use to monitor. And you can also monitor through headphones. So for instance, while I'm live and operating the presentation out to stream, I'll use a headset. So I've got a Razer headset. So as I mentioned, you got the bus output, so I can also send these out. So for instance, if I've got a separate audio out of my computer that I plug into a separate speaker or a mixing desk, something like that, I can then send that there, and then that when we enable A on the input, it will send to that source. So just for my purposes, I'm going to leave these enabled, which will allow me to route internally within the software. Something also to note is the video output. So here you've got 4 outputs, and then basically output 1 is the what's sending out to the stream. And then you've got 3 extra outputs which you can also send. So for instance, if I've got a second monitor and I want to have a multi-view of all my sources that are coming in, I can send that on too. So all I would do is drop that down here, and as you can see, I can either send the preview, which is on the left, or I can send a multi-view, which will give you basically squares with all of your inputs in, or I can send out a specific input. Great. So what we're going to do is now build out some multi-views. So we've got all of our inputs rather here. And then for our show, we're going to create a scene, as I like to call it. So what we're going to do is add another input. And then if we go up to color, and then what we want to do is make that transparent. So essentially it just creates a transparent layer for me to work on. Great. So as you'll see here, this is totally blank and there's nothing there. So as I said with vMix, it's very modular. So you have to sort of tell it what you want to do or tell it where you want things to do. So what we are going to do is create a scene with my background here. The blue background, we're going to put a logo on there. We're going to put my camera in there and then presentation. So for example, the use case for this would be if we have a presenter on screen and then we want to share their presentation at the same time. And then also we want to have a bit of branding and a background behind them. So as you'll see here on the left and right of my background, it's not quite 16 by 9. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come into the settings here. So there's a little cog on every input. If we click that, and then that will give you the settings for each input. So if I want to rename that, what you want to do, ideally, if you're building a shofar with like 100 inputs or 200 inputs, something like that, you want to name everything and keep it nice and tidy. So I can create a name here. And then also it'll tell me the resolution, the frame rate it's coming in, and then whether it's de-interlacing or not. So what we want to do to make that bigger is go to position. So what we can do here is resize our input. So as you can see here, you've got the zoom on various axes. So we are just going to make this fit. So if we now will see that we've now made that full screen. You've also got pan, and you've also got your up and down. What you can also do is crop. So you can crop on all axes as well. Great, so we've now made our background full screen, and this is ready to create into a scene. So we're going to create this and give it a name, speaker with presentation. Okay, great. So we've now got a blank scene. So to put all these elements together, what you want to do is come into the multi-view. And then what a multi-view allows you to do is layer up sources. So for example, we want the background first, so we put that in layer 1. We want the presentation, so that could be layer 2, or we could make the speaker layer 2. It's entirely up to you. But what you have to remember is 1 is the layer behind, and then 10 is the layer on top. So if you do it in order of... So what we do, if we drop down, what we want to do, so we want our background as the background. So now what we've done is that's put our background on the background, and then we want to bring our presentation in. So as you'll notice, now that because our presentation input is 1920 by 1080, that's now full screen. So what we'll do is we will resize that. So I want to put my speaker on the left and then my presentation on the right. So I'm just going to scale that to something around, if we just reset that and then move that over to the right. Great, so we've now added our presentation, and then we'll just make it slightly bigger, and then there we go. Great, so what we're going to do now is add our camera for our presenter. So for instance, this could be an incoming caller, or this could be a camera in the room pointing at a stage with someone on a lectern, or it's a panel discussion, something like that. But in this instance, it'd just be a single presenter. So again, if I come to my third layer and then click USB camera, again, this has become full screen. So what we're going to do, if we size that and then bring that over to the left. So we've now obviously got this input. It's 1920 by 1080, so it's widescreen. But usually what I do for my presentations is crop it, so the speaker is more sort of square. So what I can do is crop that particular overlay. So as you'll see here, our USB camera is on 3. So if we come back over to position, and then I want to make this a bit more square. So we're just going to crop that in slightly. And then we've made that square. And obviously you'd ask your presenter, or you'd straighten up your camera so that the presenter's in the middle of the screen. Obviously mine's just off to the side at the moment, but obviously it would be dead center. So that's great. So what we've done there is created a basic presentation with a speaker layout. And then also for your event, the client may want it branded, for instance, with a Twitter hashtag or their logo. So again, come back to the cog, come back to multi-view, and then we're going to add our logo. So again, that's come up as it is as the input. And then we're going to come to position. And then what we can do is we can also move that. And then there we go. So that's a really basic idea. So as you can see, there's white around my logo. I would suggest when requesting logos, or if it's your own designs that you're making in Photoshop or some other design suite, is make a logo with a transparent layer and import it as a PNG, and then you won't have all the white around it and it'll overlay nicely. So that's a real basic overview on how to create a scene within vMix. And then in part 2, I believe we're going to go a bit more advanced, and then I can show you some further techniques and, building up a show in further detail.
Absolutely. Fantastic, Nick. This is awesome. I was sitting there watching, and so it was fantastic to watch you and see how things were running there and see how things were, you putting that all together. And this is why I wanted Nick. He's you can tell he's been working a lot on this process, and this is something to kind of give you an example of what we're talking about for virtual production. That's where people like Nick or myself or others in this space that are managing these productions in a virtual type environment now with the new norm, you can utilize Nick and his skills and his ability of his company to help produce what he just, what he very simply demonstrated. Nick, I think I was really fantastic about vMix and seeing a lot of the inputs. It reminds me a lot of the New Tech TriCaster series products that I use from a production switcher, but that was very, very helpful. That was super cool. I really appreciate your time on that and everything. So Nick said part 2. This is going to be the cliffhanger. We're going to go advanced. So we're going to go maybe from the level 100 to the 200. So stay tuned. And Nick and I will be back in part 2. Stay safe, stay well.